recording.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
All right. So
Action.
yeah. I think we all know we're all going through a world pandemic right now. And so I had reached out to some of my friends on what I can, like if we have any tips on self-healing and metaphysical stuff or anything like that we're experiencing while we're under quarantine. So I don't know, who wants to start?
Well, I'll start. My name is Roberto. I'm a medical anthropologist, and I'm also practicing Ayahuasca, working in the Peruvian Amazonian shamanic tradition. And I wouldn't necessarily put it in air quotes because it really is a pandemic on the outside. It's not something that's fake or imaginary. People are really suffering and dying, and I think that there has to be coordinated global response to that. We can't just wish it away. So it's I'm sorry for hijacking the conversation immediately, but I wanted to address that. But it's important that we keep a balance, in my opinion, between being realistic and being scientifically based, and also appealing to the metaphysical, which is also happening at the same time, but not to be overwhelmed by the metaphysical and thinking that wishful thinking will defeat this. I think that's just pure insanity, personally.
Oh yeah, macrocosm equals microcosm, right? So like we're seeing the reflection of like the collective consciousness represented in the physical world through what's going on.
There is that, but there's also a biological thing that happens. Pandemics are real. They have happened throughout history. And the thing that's amazing is that people's historical memory is so short that they don't remember what happened just 100 years ago in the States itself. You know, and people are going on about 5G or Bill Gates and all these conspiracy theories. It's like, guys, the world had 50 million people, up to 50 million people die just 100 years ago. So this is not just a conspiracy theory. This is part of human history, that viruses do emerge, and they do challenge our evolution, and they do change societies.
It's actually really interesting because when I was in my freshman year of college, I had to take a course called Plagues and People, and like the whole thing, he was talking about how they're, like we're built. I think like something about Russian prisons had some like strain of virus that no one could treat because of like, or was it a bacteria? I can't remember, but like because of the use of antibiotics up to a certain point, and then people stopped using them, so it was growing like these super bugs, and like he was basically saying like we haven't had a good old fashioned plague in a while, and we're long overdue for it. So this is in 2005 or 2004 that I took that course, and I was thinking about that like right when it happened.
Oh, goodness. Well, from an epidemiological point of view, it's not a question of if, but a question of when. I mean, they just know how things work and how biology itself works. Viruses are always adapting. They're always looking for an ecological niche. And also the thing is, the most cogent explanation I've come across is essentially this is a consequence of us encroaching on the nature's habitat, forcing animals and human beings to be in close proximity because they have nowhere else to go. So, the whole connection with, perhaps in Africa, you've got the monkey game meat happening, and you have in China, a complete lack of habitat for a lot of these animals. So we're being forced closer and closer together, which means nootic transmission is much more possible. The transmission of genes from the animals to humans, and then from human to human transmission. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
Sorry, it's only 9 a.m. for me, so.
Oh, well, I mean, this is incredible. You at 9 a.m.?
I'm just waking up. Let me get my motor going.
If I could get half of that at 9 a.m., great.
Okay.
I was just telling V, I'm making myself some tea right now because I'm like, oof. So the energy level, so we just had a spring equinox too. And the
Happy equinox, level, exactly.
Yes,
So how are you guys feeling
massive.
That? Oh, sorry, how are you ladies feeling that? Yeah? Big energy.
Yes, big energy. Started my moon cycle, just like a lot of waves of that coming in, and a lot of naps. Just wanting to sleep a lot lately.
Seriously, you too? I've been just like, I can't do this, and I slept 3 times yesterday. Like in the day, I was like, I can't operate, sleep, and then dream.
Well, I have my theories on that. I think that like we're I don't know. So like you said, dreams. How about you continue with that thought? What sort of dreams?
Okay, so I'll tell you what it feels like to me. When you go into the jungle and you study with a plant. You do a dieta with a plant, like you're learning from rose or oak or eucalyptus, whatever. So you basically have to go into this space where you're not taking any salt or sugar or spices or oil or sexual activity, and you're pretty much isolated. And then the plant can teach you. As a sign of that, very often we get very tired during the day, and then we're forced to sleep, and then we have these kind of crazy, hyper real dreams. This is exactly the same, although I'm not on a dieta. I don't know, Christina, you remember this? I mean, you've done a dieta, so you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
So it feels like there's this massive process happening. And today I went on Facebook just as soon as I woke up, and I said, anybody else having this experience? And everybody, just like everybody's saying, yeah, we're going through the same thing. So, I wanted to do a reality check to see, is it just my process? Because I do dream, but these are big dreams. And so I just wanted to say, hey, maybe I'm not alone. Maybe something else is happening. So back to you guys.
Yes. Yeah. I echo. The dreams have been intense. My sister and I sometimes, like, we've actually shared dream experiences. We had like a similar type dream, and I thought that was interesting. Also, like, yeah, just this surreal quality to dreams, which I usually have pretty colorful and pretty involved dreams, but I mean, it's something about the colors that are a little different. So I'm not sure, like, I'm just documenting as much as I can about that, and
sure. I mean, what I'm getting is a hyper reality to it, and a vividness, and a whole body experience. So today, for example, there's part of the dream where I was in a boat, and I could feel the acceleration, like it was meant to be like a cruise ship, like a canal boat, but it was doing like a speedboat, and I felt that acceleration, that force in my body. I was like, whoa. So that's the kind of level of detail we're getting into. How about you, V? What's going on for you?
Definitely having more dreams, sleeping a lot. Although I will say I've been sleeping a lot since that like awakening period. I'm using my air quotes again, but yeah.
No, you're not.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You can't logically say my awakening process, but like what I consider to be my awakening process. So I've been sleeping so much throughout the last couple of years, but definitely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but definitely now, like one thing I noticed is I'm almost going into like possible realities or something. They're super vivid. They're like different lives, but like they feel like they're really happening. And then I'll like drift into these day naps where like it's almost like I was telling Christina, it's like I'm almost hearing people giving me directives, like right when I fall asleep, or like talking to me about, did you do this? And then I don't those dreams I can't really coherently remember, but it's almost like I'm going somewhere and then coming back.
Are you getting guidance, you're saying? Are you getting specific instructions or suggestions? How does it feel like?
It's happening, but I can't remember what guidance.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so that's during the day. What about at nighttime? Are they different at night?
Yeah, at night it's mostly just like what I am thinking is like a different timeline or something. Because like I've had dreams, like for instance, my dad passed away when I was 21, and I never dream about him, and a period where I had like 3 dreams about him where he was still alive and we were hanging out, and it was extra like you were saying with the colors and stuff.
So the difference between the daydreams, which are guidance and suggestions, which are not very vivid, and then the night ones, which are, you're saying, also alternative reality kind of dreams, which are much more vivid, much more colorful.
Yeah.
And how do you feel afterwards? Is there an emotional quality to the experience afterwards?
The night dream or the daydream?
Either, whatever strikes you. What's your response to that?
Oh, I feel like it's almost like I get super tired and my whole body just like falls into that, and I pop back in. Like it's almost like a suction thing when I wake up, and then I come back and I'm refreshed and I feel like super charged. Yeah, I don't know if this is something y'all have been experiencing either too. Like I've told Christina, sometimes I feel like my eyes look a little bit different, like a silver or something to them, like when those experiences happen afterwards. But I don't know.
Well, that's valid because you're seeing a difference yourself, right?
Yeah.
And question, how does the world feel to you or look to you after you come out? Not just your eyes, but externally. Is your response, are your responses different? Are they heightened? Are they diminished? Or what's the story? Are they the same?
That's an interesting question. Like I've talked to Christina before, like when I had been unemployed, and sometimes now still, I'll go into like these bliss states where the world's kind of like got this haze to it.
Mm-hmm.
Trees will look really a lot more 3D. But I can't really recall if like after dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my personal response is that because I don't dream like this normally, the fact that they're happening in a sequence or every day, I'm going, okay, these are big dreams. You know, this is significant. That's what flagged my attention. Like, oh, okay, because I mean, a normal dream I wouldn't pay any attention to necessarily because it's part of the process of processing information, blah blah blah. But these are like significant, right? How about you, Christina? What's your process like?
Yeah, like when
are you also feeling drained and tired?
Well, just for these past 2 days specifically, definitely, I would say like this is Friday. Yeah, since Wednesday, it just kind of, so I went from having sort of restless energy, which is pretty typical for me right before a cycle hits, it's like this ramp up and heightened emotions and heightened just irritability
Everything.
and kind of everything. Feel a little squirrel brained, and then and then it hits, and then I'm like down, like I'm like, oh, so tired and drained.
Exactly.
So yeah, I've been doing lots of teas for myself to keep it going. And as far as dreams, so for me, like day-to-day dreams, like you said, it's like they're processing daily events. But sometimes I'll jot those down if I can remember them. But the big dreams, I notice, stick with me. So it's like I can come back to them sometimes weeks, months, years later, and they're still there. And that like emotional, like that feeling is still there, and the quality of it's still there. And like when symbols show up or when people, sometimes I'll remember having a talking dream, but if I could actually remember a conversation where someone said something back to me, I definitely write that down, because that's like a symbol. And then so lately I had a deity show up in a dream, which is like really rare, that I'm like, oh my gosh, like that.
Oh, wow. That is.
That's nuts. I recently started my chanting practice again on like japa with like mala beads and stuff. So I wonder if it's connected in that way. But
are you chanting to a specific deity, like Shiva or Ganesh?
To Vishnu,
Vishnu.
specifically to Krishna.
Wow.
So there's like a Maha mantra and a couple of other mantras.
Wow.
But yeah, that was really it was like one of those things it was just a split second, and it was just a flash, but I remember it, and it was like almost terrifying, but really like serene at the same time. So
that's a big energy to hold.
Yes,
even
like it was really big. So so yeah, that really rocked me. I'm like, oh, whoa, what is that about?
No, it's. I remember one day Kali came through my body, or like erupted, like exactly, like a tower through the tummy and up, and I was like, oh, it's Kali. Okay, hi. How you doing? Don't hurt me.
Yeah, literally, you're just like, please don't hurt me. Ah!
And it's so funny because you recognize the archetype immediately. You go, oh, yeah. Kali, okay, better be good.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's like these deities are they embody these archetypes too, and so for all the things, because in the dream world, your subconscious can pull from anything, unlike any culture, any timeline, and so it's interesting when things like that come in, and you're like, whoa, like what did I have for dinner?
Yeah, no more cheese.
Yeah, right.
Before bedtime, at least. Yeah. So, I mean, so it's interesting that this is happening, and not just to me, but to both of you and to many other people. It's seemingly, from my straw poll, it's like, yeah, everyone's saying yes. So, what do we think this means? Is there a significance to it? I mean, it doesn't seem random. It seems like there's really something afoot.
Yeah. I wonder if it's like for the first time, because everything's so slow, we're all getting regular periods of sleep.
Some of us.
So,
This was happening to me slightly before, though. I mean, like, I feel like there were like times I'd do these night walks. So I was trying to meditate and kind of concentrate. And I almost feel like I'm new to the whole like channeling or any of that stuff. But like, I almost feel like there's this one energy that comes to me that's kind of like more like dragony or like more masculine, I guess. And that started like a couple months ago.
And you, Christina, what's your take on this?
oh, well, besides I mean, I'm joking about the sleep thing, but I think there is heightened, a couple of things. Well, maybe heightened sensitivity, maybe because there's this sense that like, oh, the combination of the pandemic and people's loved ones, and then sort of being restricted in some things, and just life looking very different. So depending on like how you cope with that might bring out some feelings of like panic or security, or maybe lack of security. I don't know.
But surely that would manifest in dreams that reflect that. So far, I've noticed that the dreams do not reflect morbidity or fear or only that I've talked to people, or my I don't know about your experience, but mine have been zero.
My own would echo that too. So the other thing that would then mean is that it's maybe us like strengthening, maybe us like tapping into some latent kind of maybe that is it, like on a subconscious level, we all we already, instead of being prepared for the worst, like we're already assuming that we're all going to be okay, and we're like taking those steps to like reinforce that for ourselves. Or
maybe even well, that's a collective thing, but maybe there's a transpersonal non-human energy that isn't necessarily to do with our own sphere of consciousnesses, that is actually manifesting itself through us, like the earth itself is going through an evolution. I mean, I'm just putting it out there that we're now manifesting in our dreamscapes.
Wow, yeah, that would seem, I mean, that seems in line with what I experienced. So I think, I mean, larger scale, I see this as, in many ways, it seems like the training wheels are off, as far as like
Yep, training wheels are definitely off.
they're off.
It's not a dress rehearsal.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, this would be like the opening night of, I don't know, I'm thinking of a famous opera or something. Like it's it's the opening.
It's not a soft opening. It's definitely
it's not a soft opening. And we're getting tested, if you will, just about, and I'll speak just from my own personal deal, where I'm like, I have a lot of tools and out there to cope with life and all that, and I personally love learning and reading about the deeper things about life. And I feel like right now I'm being asked personally, like where I stand, if I actually trust myself, if I actually trust those deities, the creator and the universe, if I actually trust that this is a plan, if I and so like I have to answer yes in that sense, and then I have to live that out instead of relying on other things or making excuses or being like right now I'm actually not too busy, which is awesome. So yeah, I see that as the what do you call it, like the final exam in a way too, like the thesis defense coming.
Oh my goodness. I would have dressed I would have worn clean underpants in that case. If I'd known it was going to be a formal thesis defense. Or thesis defense. It's not mine, okay? I'm just borrowing it from somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, so for a lot of people, 2012 seemed to be like the,
portal.
And the portal was open, right? But, it's 2020 now. There's been several, time has passed, and we've all gotten a chance, I think, to make our own conclusions and to come up with how we think we should best live our lives.
Definitely. V, what's your take on this?
Oh yeah, I mean, my belief on this is that it's an awakening period where, and like the 2012 references, that was a turning point in where some people got awakened in the first round, and that like everybody's kind of working through collectively all the fears that we've had, and like I feel like it's a falling away of a really broken old system, and that we're coming back into some sort of power and becoming closer to who we were created as. And like, for instance, my brother's not into any of this. He's my whole family's Catholic, and like last year he's always been kind of like psychic, but like to a point now where like he would just say my sister-in-law's password out loud while she was typing it, and she's like, "Are you looking?" And he was across the room, and like,
right,
he'll just have all these things happen. So I think a lot of these gifts that are like that you see in movies are actually things that we have that are awakening. So, and I think we're working through like a lot of fear so that we can have like a higher frequency.
And that I actually agree with you. I think I've seen through the medicine work that there's going to be a process of energetic evolution. I mean, how do I best say this? What's the thing that's most interesting about working with plant medicine? Is that it reveals a lot, in that we have the capacity to have these multidimensional experiences, and yet we couldn't possibly have those multidimensional experiences unless we ourselves were multidimensional creatures. Mm-hmm. And yet in normal everyday life, we don't manifest this. We're very kind of firmly rooted in 3D. But this may be kind of a shaking off of the kind of hypnosis, global hypnosis, or our energetic bonds, and things are becoming loosened, so that now we're beginning to move much more into a more fluid, multidimensional space or state. That we're now moving into a new reality. So it may be like we're in the cocoon period, and we don't even know that we're going to become butterflies. Does that make sense? That we're actually butterflies within that cocoon.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I've actually like, it's not controllable by any means, but sometimes like when I move into those bliss states with like the, hazy world, it's almost like I'm meeting versions of people or talking to people on a higher level. It's been, I can't even describe, like, just like, clearly I'm not in this realm.
Sorry, I got a message from Zoom. Are we still on? Are we still good?
Yeah, we're still good.
Okay.
Hold on.
It said that's really to do with us, but we're actually being pushed. Hang on. Yeah, go. Ready? And we're back. So maybe this is not to do with us on a personal level, but a collective level. That even maybe the Earth, we're bound up with the Earth. Of course, we're children of the Earth, and so this is maybe the Earth itself is evolving, and we're caught up in that energetic field as well.
Yeah, that's very much what it feels like.
And the world is healing itself as this is happening too. Have you guys seen, like, people were showing like in Italy, because all this like pollution and traffic with the boats, like dolphins and
stuff. No. The dolphins seem to have been photoshopped into
I'm glad you checked your facts, because I was just like, this is real. Like, why do people do things like that? Like,
yeah, there are dolphins in the Mediterranean, but I don't think they're going to pose for that suddenly in Venice.
I think my favorite was the war pigs group sting. I was like, I hope that's real. Like,
yeah. But the unicorns, they're definitely real. I mean,
okay. Unicorn is real. Oh man.
Well,
so what do we do with this kind of phenomena? How do we best work with it?
That's the question. Yeah, I think for those, this can either seem like really, really, really scary, right? Because it's a seemingly on the surface events that are out of one's control. And on the other hand, it could also mean plenty of time for personal study, meditation, being out in nature, because I mean, trees, hello, like they're not
exactly
one.
Exactly. And how many times have people actually said, "Stop the world, I want to get off"? And this is the actual perfect opportunity to really involute and go inside and spend time, not on the hamster wheel, basically.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's like the hamster wheel's actually slowed down enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, some of the advice, like, I have some friends that are kind of like on the start of their panic session, or like they hadn't been through anything before. And I was gonna share, like, when I was unemployed, like, I was so scared and had all this free time on my hand. Thank goodness I was able to collect unemployment benefits at the time. But like, as I was just sitting there and sleeping a lot, I started to dive into like metaphysical stuff and meditating, and like all this free time in your hands is like like Christina said, a great time to dive into that. And I almost feel like this is all orchestrated for that, and an opportunity for us to like reset the world, really. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you see people aren't able to support themselves. There's all these small businesses that are barely running right now because they're not able to. And like, meanwhile, all the online businesses, not going to say any names, are doing really well and not helping other people. So or like, it's a great opportunity for us to really decide like what sort of world we want to live in. And
Exactly. I mean, if I may interject here, when I'm talking to my groups, before we do an ayahuasca ceremony, I often say to them that, look, we're basically a collection of stories that other people have told about us, and stories we've told about ourselves that form our identity and form our reality, right? And while they're useful to give us some kind of solidity and stability, they can sometimes become anachronistic, i.e. they were useful at one time, but as we evolve and change and transform, they become increasingly constricting, because we're much more than any single narrative, where we have all these quantum possibilities of who we can be. And so what the medicine ceremony does, in my opinion, it allows this unloosening and this letting go or jettisoning of all these narratives that don't really serve us anymore, and the ability to try on new ways of being, new ways of perceiving, new ways of existing, essentially. And so people often leave the stories that aren't serving them, and are able to adopt new perspectives, new ways of being. And in a sense, I think that this is actually what's happening with this whole pandemic experience, that we're going to see rapidly what's not working in our societies. What the very structures themselves are going to be very, very challenged, because a lot of them are based on falsehood. And we look at the governments, that they're incompetent, they haven't got the vision, they haven't got the professionalism, and they're actually a big part of this problem. So there's what we can do individually to protect ourselves, and to take essential measures to ensure we don't get contaminated. But another level, we also live nested within a society, and it's how that society organizes itself and responds, and how it takes care of its people, which is critical now. And I think, especially in the UK, so I'm from the UK, and I can see that we're very much like the US in terms of our response. It's been tardy, it's dissimulated, it hasn't been truthful, hasn't been transparent, and that is coming through very strongly. And the population is also picking up on that hang on a second, these are so-called leaders, they're not really taking care of us in the way they should be.
Yeah.
End of lecture.
Yeah, well, this brings up like contracts, the idea of like a social contract, which was originally, getting into John Locke and the original social contract, but the idea that like, we're assembled as this community within borders that create these larger entities that we are identifying as countries. And at a certain point, right, like we all agree that these basic kind of services would be met for the larger good, right? And then
I just don't get it. America is such a conundrum to me. It's like, how can you willingly subsidize the military and not pay for education and healthcare? What are you fighting for at the end of the day? Which citizens are you protecting if they're stupid and they're sick?
Well,
sorry guys, I don't want to bash America, but it is an insane system.
We are seeing right now, I think, an interesting. So this brings up another point of like, so we're both not full-time employees right now. So in America, that means no benefits.
Right.
Tons of people like us. And absolutely. That includes all the Uber drivers and Lyft drivers.
All the gig economy, basically.
And the gig economy people that makes
hours.
up a huge part of this economy, not to mention all your construction workers and your farmer, day shift workers, basically. Not to mention all the peeps at, the mart and all these other things where they barely give people a full-time, hours.
And the rights that go with a full-time job and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's almost like this class where you have like the people that can afford to get sick and then the people that can't. And, yeah, exactly. Giant face palm.
Not even really sick either. It's also a vacation and
yeah, just the bare minimum here is so much at a lower level. Like for an English speaking country, we really are just missing the ball and not up to par with all the other English speaking countries. We're just not there.
On what metric, or how do you measure that?
I'm just looking at like the bare minimum things that, obviously healthcare, like that's a big one. And then of course, vacations, the other thing, like we work, I think, the most hours out of all the English speaking countries.
Exactly. And childcare, it's just insane that there's,
yes, maternity leave, things like maternity leave for the male partner, or like that time is so short. It's like a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about the difference between the UK and the US is that the UK was really much closer to the front lines physically and experientially than America was in the World War II. And so, when all the soldiers demobbed and came back, they basically came back and said, well, what were we fighting for? Because if they were faced with the same system of inequality of if you couldn't afford it, you couldn't have an education, and if you couldn't afford the medicine, you would die. And so there was this fomenting, a sense of rebellion, like things have got to change. We didn't just fight 5 years to go back to the same oppression. Whereas I think America, being physically distanced from the actual destruction of war and the tumult of that, they weren't forced with those social pressures. They could continue as business as usual. And so that's why, I grew up under a system that was from cradle to grave, education and health. And it just seems like a very sane and mature response of a society to look after its citizens in that way. Whereas you look at America, you go, what happened here? Oh my goodness, they're just taking advantage of you left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Still you proclaim yourselves as the greatest nation on earth. This is the most ironic thing. It's like propaganda.
It's a lot of propaganda, unfortunately. Well, and it's like you can't convince anyone, though, of something otherwise, because...
Unless you experience it, yeah. That's, I remember, like, I did a study abroad at the worst, do them again, the worst school in London.
Oh, which one was that then? Worst school? I've got to hear. Which one was that?
I don't want to trash talk them.
Tell me. Trash away. Go. Which one?
London.
London what?
University. So yeah, I guess that's gonna be it. I don't know how to wrap it up. I mean, I don't know where you cut it off, so.
It's cool. Just before we started talking about colleges. So.
Okay, so we were talking about transitions and transformation and evolutionary pressures to, become multidimensional.
Yeah, that was big stuff. We got some big pants to put on.
But it's true. We have a choice now, like you said. We have a choice, an inflection point. Do we move into fear and panic and a rerun of The Purge, the franchise, or do we actually, really find our inner strength and inner calmness and sensibleness as well to understand that this is not going to go away unless and be defeated unless we take positive measures. I've been watching this since day one. Since I first in the jungle, I had internet connection, and I saw this happening in China. I went, this is going to be something. So, and I remember being the only person on the plane leaving Peru to Colombia to Madrid wearing a mask and walking around Madrid with a mask, and in London and in the UK with a mask. It's just, but because I knew what was coming, basically. But there's still some people out there going, it's Bill Gates, it's 5G, it's bioweaponry. It doesn't make any difference. What are you going to do now?
Yeah, that's true. Is it actually affecting people? So regardless of what source it came from.
It's affecting them mentally and emotionally because they're getting into all this kind of down a rabbit hole that is really very impractical. It's like, what are you going to do now? How are you going to respond? So what if it was Bill Gates? What can you do about it? So what if it was, a Chinese bioweapon? What can you do about it? Really, seriously. but you can wash your hands.
It's gonna be like V for Vendetta. We're all gonna do our time, and we're gonna be liberated, and then we're gonna come out, and we're gonna love the way the rain feels on our skin.
Let's see what happens. But ladies, thank you so much for inviting me to speak.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for joining us. And
you're welcome.
Thank you as well. And yeah, namaste. So much love. Aloha.
Likewise. Aloha.
Yeah.
Good. And nice to meet you too, V. Pleasure meeting you.